at what we'll primarily, if that's a word, be working with today. We've got our skull, we've got the face on the, we've got our skull, yeah, got the face on the skull, we've got the cranium, we've got the join in between. And we're going to be working with the deep earth energies mainly, but we're going to be balancing it with the fire energies. And I think as we go through this, with each set of organs and energies, I'm going to pair them. They pair up nicely. So I'm going to pair the deep earth with the fire, the lung circuit with the kidney circuit, and the yellow energies with the higher energies. So you can feel the difference between them. If you just go into the deep dark energies, you just end up in this grounded space and you just go deeper and deeper into it. And you may not even know you're in that. But if you are in the deep earth energies and you come into the fire energies, oh, that's completely different. And you recognize where you've been and you recognize where you've ended up. And then in the interplay between both, you can go deeper into both sides. So we're going to work with this. I'm going to take the face off. You've seen how easy it comes off when I don't want it to come off, haven't you? Okay, there we go. It's come off. So there we've got the skull. So we're working with the fire phoenix and the back of the here. And I'm going to take that bone out. So you may have noticed I kind of come up against science and against everybody else fairly often, saying no, that's not reality. And likewise with this bone, in all of the anatomy books, all of the skulls and everywhere in the world, this is split up into it's the occiput until you see that black line. This is the occiput and this is the sphenoid, and they're talked of, well, they're shown as two separate bones and they're talked of as two separate bones, and people treat them as two separate bones. And most people don't know they are one bone. A lot of cranial sacral therapists know, well, all cranial sacral therapists probably know they're one bone, but even in that, they're still treated as two bones, and a lot of work is done on the junction between them. And craniosacral therapy is different to holographic breathing from what I did in that, working with this opening and closing rhythm that wasn't the same as the breath, and had a really soft, easy flowing movement that was normally separate from the breath. Now that may have changed in the last years, but in this, we're very clearly working with the breath, and there is the physical manifestation of the muscles connecting to these two areas, which is what I am going to describe. So if you're a craniosacral therapist or a cranial osteopath, just noticing there's two different camps, and you can be a member of both camps. You don't have to choose one or the other. So this line here is, I forgot the name, it's a sphenobasilar junction, something like that. And when we were born and up until the age of about 13 or 14, there was cartilage there. But it wasn't a joint. It was part cartilage and part bone. And from birth, slowly, as it moves on, it just gets more and more bone until the age of 12 or 13, it's all bone. So it's solid, but it's not like it can open and close. It's more flexible than a bone, but both bones either side are merged into this cartilage. But that is the same as these two other places. The same thing is happening here. That's cartilage at birth, and this is cartilage at birth. And this is the largest one. This covers a massive area. So there's a lot of flexibility there at birth. This is the second most flexible, this is big, and this is the weakest junction. You see you've got that foraminae there anyway, and then also it's the thinnest point, so this is very flexible anyway. Where the spinobasilar one is, it's really quite thick. It's a thick junction, and this is the finest one. The cartilage there was very, very fine, but it stays there much longer. These two kind of fill out over the first 6 months to a year, really, and just become bone. So for me, it is one bone because there's no joint there. If you're going to take into account the cartilages and the joints, I think you've got to take into account all of them rather than just one of them for the holographic breathing. And in the holographic breathing, we're working with the physical breath. So I'm just going into this in depth because I know there are cranial people watching this, and there are cranial people going to be watching the video as well afterwards. And I don't want to alienate anybody. I work in both worlds with it, and I find both areas of it useful. So with the breath, and definitely with the movement, the hands, feet, arms and legs, there's this tension. I think everybody has done the movement of the arms and legs by now. There's this tension, tightening of the arms and legs and opening of the hands and feet, and the muscles are tensioning, and that tensioning is through the whole body. The muscles are tightening to open up the lungs. Now they're not so much tightening at the front of the abdomen, but they're not relaxing on the in-breath. It's a controlled relaxing, it's a controlled opening. But in the spine, they are tightening. All of those muscles between the ribs and the lower back, they're part of that tightening up through the neck and up into the head. So you get this tightening of the muscles, pulling into the cranium, pulling into the sides of the cranium, pulling into the jaw from the hyoid bone here. And what you get is I should have left the skull all in one piece, but I'm going to have to do it just with this one bone. So you've got, now I call this the balance bone. Rather than the occiput and the sphenoid, this is the balance bone because it balances on the spine. This is the deep earth energies of the balance bone. This is the balance of the balance bone. This is kind of the tail of the sphenix. This is the heart of the sphenix, legs of the sphenix, wings of the sphenix. And also you get the pharynx. You've got the esophagus here, the diaphragm's pulling down, the esophagus, the trachea pulling down because they're on top of it, pulling down the hyoid bone, pulls down the jaw, tongue on the roof mouth, pulls down the roof mouth. So you get this pull down of the face just from the diaphragm dropping. And with the muscles from here to the hyoid bone as well, that pulling the face down, that's all opening, plus the esophagus and pharynx join on here. So from the diaphragm there's this straight pull, there's a tube from here right directly straight down to the diaphragm, and as the diaphragm drops there's this pull into the tail or past the balance point, the tail of the sphenix, so that is also pulling down. So the fire sphenix gets rotated. The movement is the same as in cranial sacral therapy, but the balance point or the fulcrum is here, and the bones just flex the whole way through the Five Phoenix. They flex forwards and mainly at this weakest point, and it flexes back here. So we're talking about minute movements, but they feel big because the bones in the body, they're supple. They're not like dead bones that are brittle, they're supple. So there's this movement there. So we're going into a bit more detail with this, but I want to be clear and I want to give a proper explanation that everybody will understand. And I don't want to alienate anybody, and it's fine to write me emails, say, I disagree with everything you say. I will listen, it's fine. And I have my reality on it, but everybody has their reality. So the breath is pulling the Five Phoenix forwards, open, down. The breath is pulling the occiput down, the deep earth energies down here. And so that sits on the spine. And see, it's balancing. I'll have to get a new name of these, the condyles of the balance bone. So breathing in. And see, people find this difficult, that the whole spine is shortening on the in-breath, or that the vertebrae are condensing together. As this is all pulling down, it's pulling the cranium down onto the spine. So this all shortening, which is different to our experience of the breath. We have this experience of everything lengthening. Now, I'm not asking you to experience it as shortening, and I'm not going to teach it per se. I will allow people to feel that, but when I teach it, quite often people get into problems. But underneath is going to be happening whatever. And you get two effects. The tightening between all of the vertebrae and the muscles relating to them, they straighten the spine. So in one way it gets longer, but also it's condensing the spine. So it's getting shorter. And this condensing, there's a power to that condensing, and it builds up the strength in the discs. It exercises between all of the discs. It puts a pressure into the vertebrae. So you get breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. This flexing open on the in-breath of the whole balance bone, and it's flexing through its whole body. Now, if it was a baby, you would get a big flexing here, where all this cartilage is here, a big flexing here, and a flexing here where it's more joining to the face. But it's through all three of them. So with a baby, you get the same thing, but the flexion is much bigger because you've got cartilage in three places there. And what happens is, through injuries, physical, psychological, emotional, mental, whatever, when someone's very young and that's very flexible, they can go into that place and they settle, and then it becomes bone and it kind of gets locked into place. But when we start working consciously, when we start being able to feel this movement consciously, breathing in, breathing out, we feel this bowing of that bone. You start also being able to feel the inconsistencies to either side, or spiraling through it and in different, and you can start letting them unwind the full way through the whole bone. But what I'm saying is, this bone, the balance bone, is the center of the interaction between the cranium, spine, and face. That's the center, and that is what we're working with today. We're mainly working with this bone. We're mainly working with the deep earth energies here. This is the main emphasis of today, and the organs to that, and to a lesser degree we're going to be working with the fire phoenix and the organs to do with that. And we're going to look at the different quality of power of the breath into the back of the cranium as opposed to the sphenoid. The fire phoenix. Because there's a more direct and powerful muscular attachment to the deeper, I'm going to call it something else, the base of the balance bone, the base of the balance bone. And it's like a crane. You've got the back of the head here, and then you've got the fire phoenix here, but the fire phoenix is connected to the face. So you've got this great big, what's it called? Like a crane, counterbalance, or I've forgotten the name, but anyway, this is much longer. So if it's balancing here, this needs to, if this is twice as long, this needs to be twice as strong to hold it in place. Lever, you've got a big lever at the front. Get the spine. Put that on the spine. Don't fall apart, face. Come on, stay together. Come on, you can do it. Okay, slide that onto there. Can you see the length of the lever there? So there's got to be a much bigger pull here because you've got this big lever forwards into the whole face there. So the musculature here has got to compensate for the depth, so they're both pulling down and it's further forward at the front. So this has to be strong at the back, and there's a whole different quality of the pulling down into the base of the balance bone as the quality of the fire in the front of the balance bone. And the power in the back of the balance bone is connecting us to our strength, to our ground, to our earth, and our power, our physical power. And it's connecting that in the breath. And it's connecting to that shortening and lengthening of the spine. And we'll work with that. We'll work with the movement into the fire phoenix and maybe the face, the different quality and the different feel of the pull and what it opens. And we'll also spend some time working into the temporal bones to feel how that feels totally different. So there's still a pull down, it's still doing the same thing, but it opens up a whole different area of energy, of feeling, of qualities within us. I feel this whole arena of spiritual energy talking to us. So as well as the physical understanding, be aware of the spiritual transmission. There's a physical level to everything, but at the same time there is a spiritual speaking. And they may have been waiting around a long time to talk this truth. Now, I'm not saying other things different to it aren't truth, but I don't think this version has been taught so much before. So to allow whatever that spirituality is that's coming in at the moment behind this information, because I think it goes much deeper than what I've just explained. There's a much deeper spiritual significance. And there's so much, if you look around, the word lie has been edited out of our language, but there's so many lies, there's so much deception. We don't know what's true, what's false, who's being true, what's going on with all of the hidden agendas. But we can find out what's true in our anatomy and the spirituality. There's a line with the spirituality to do with truth. So I haven't actually seen this perception of this being taught. It may very well be. I've been out of cranial circles for a long, long time, so maybe it is being taught like this as well now. I don't know, but this is how I see it. And that is why I've changed the name of this bone, because you can't go on calling it the occiput and sphenoid, because it pulls you into that. Just naming it as two bones brings it into the reality of it being two bones. And as you can see, it clearly isn't two bones. It's one bone. All right.